My name is Faridat Audu. I'm the CEO of a company I founded just like early this year called Global Education. We are passionate about making kids bilingual in English and French.
Hello and welcome to the Ndini podcast. I'm Sandra Chuma. Every week, I'm bringing you conversations with bold, inspiring, trailblazing, and influential women of African descent. These are women from all walks of life, women who are entrepreneurs, artists, social activists, athletes. Each one of them, in their own way, is changing the narrative on what it means to be an African woman. They'll be telling us about their journeys and sharing their secrets to success. And I hope that by hearing their inspiring stories, you will be inspired. It's funny, isn't it, how sometimes our inspiration to do something comes in the most random or unexpected ways. For Faridat Audu, the inspiration to become bilingual came in grade school when she admired her friend's sister, who she thought was so elegant and sophisticated, in part because she spoke French. This admiration inspired Faridat to move to Côte for university and to immerse herself in the language. And this lifelong interest has led to academic degrees for Faridat and to her becoming a bilingual teacher and author, and most recently, CEO of a company focused on promoting bilingualism. Here's my conversation with Faridat Audu. You published a book called My First Approach to Being Bilingual. First of all, what does it mean to be bilingual, and why is it important?
For me, bilingualism has come to be something that I think every parent should look into to use as a kind of fundamental gift to their children. Growing up, my parents were not bilingual. I came from a complete English background, and my second year in university, I took it upon myself to challenge myself. I moved to a country that I didn't even understand their language. I could not even say come when I moved to the French-speaking country. And I realized that it was really challenging, and by then I didn't even know what was it to be bilingual. Bilingual could come in so many ways. You could speak your native language and English and be bilingual. You could speak any other. As far as you speak more than one language, you're bilingual. But for me, it's not just being bilingual, but language that will impact your life, that will make you useful to other people that you meet. Not just your local people, but people internationally. Language that you can use as an international tool for yourself and for your children. That's what I call bilingual. It could be English and French, English and Portuguese, English and Spanish, English and German, language that is internationally known, that you can use to secure a job or you can use to contact with people around the globe. That's what I call being bilingual.
Now, let's talk about your background. So you just mentioned that you grew up in a predominantly English-speaking country and an English-speaking environment, and you didn't speak any other language. So where were you raised?
I was raised in Lagos. I was raised in Lagos for the first 20 years of my life. I was in Lagos, completely soaked in the English system and my traditional language, which is Yoruba. And it came to a point then that I felt I needed to challenge myself. I felt I needed something different. I felt I needed to do something to make myself different. And that was when I moved to Côte d'Ivoire. And I started completely from a language school at the university. It was really challenging at first. And by the time I was spending my second years in the language school at the university called Sainte Université d'études françaises, because you have to do 2 years of complete French language to do your first degree. And my French lecturer told me, she's a French woman. She said, you know what? For you to really get the grip of this language, you need to forget your English background completely and soak yourself into the French system. She said, your accent, everything about you still depicts the English that you were in before. You need to forget all this. And that was what I did. I stopped doing everything I knew in English. I started doing it in French. And at the end of my 6 years, I couldn't even make a straight complete English and French anymore. I was completely soaked into the system. Everything about me was French. I breathe and eat and read French then. And that was it for me. And that was when I realized the importance of being bilingual.
Now, you picked to go to a French-speaking country. Like, first of all, why did you pick French? Because you could have moved somewhere to another country. Maybe you could have moved, I don't know, like to Mozambique, for example, where Portuguese is spoken. Why did you specifically want to learn French?
You know what? Growing up, I'm from a very, very large family. That's a different story entirely. And in my household growing up, once you are 2 years old, you are going to a boarding house. And my father will always pick the best boarding house that will take care of his children because we were really young. So there was this particular boarding house I took us to when I was very young. That was maybe I was in grade one, grade two. That school was called Children Boarding School. And kids used to come from all over Africa to the school. And when I was in my grade two, I had a bunk mate. She came from Côte d'Ivoire. She's Nigerian, but she was born and the family were all in Côte d'Ivoire. And anytime we had visiting day when parent comes to visit, our sister would come and she would be looking so sophisticated. They'll be speaking this language, French, and I'll be so blown away that, I love this language. I was young. I was just in my grade two and grade three. But I love the language then. I love the way she used to carry herself. I felt as if it was different from the way people I see around me were doing things. So when the concept of doing something different came to me, that was the first thing that came to me. I'm like, that language that my bunkmate then and that lady were speaking, I really, really want to know that language. I think that was when Côte d'Ivoire just came into my thoughts.
Now, something that was really interesting to me when I was preparing for this interview, is just how widely French is spoken across the African continent. I did not realize that there are probably more than 120 million people in Africa who speak French as their first language, and that French is spoken in 24 of the African countries on the continent. Did you know that before?
Yeah, I knew that during my research. I knew that because going into this form of bilingualism, I needed to do my research to know what I was going into and to know, if I have to encourage kids of my children's generation to soak themselves into this language and for parents to be able to soak them, I need to let them know the impact this language I've been putting on people in this part of. So I needed to do my research to know, especially for me in Africa. I did my research to the extent that I realized that in African country, we live together, especially West Africa. You find French and English countries living side by side each other, and we could not even speak each other's language, So I'm like, it's so pathetic for us that, we have African nations, French speaking, living side by side English speaking countries, and our children could not even understand each other. And that's why one of the passions came in for me that, what? I want my children and my children's generation to be able to visit each other's country and be able to speak this language with each other. I want a child from Côte d'Ivoire that has never been to Nigeria before to be able to come into Nigeria and be able to converse with a Nigerian kid without going through any stress, or a kid from Nigeria to visit Côte d'Ivoire or Benin Republic and be able to converse with them without like having any stress. That is my mission. That is what I call bilingualism in children.
So let's talk about that and your mission and the fact that you've started this company called Global VU Education. What gave you the idea to start that company?
What gave me the idea had to be from being a dynamic mom and a passionate wife. Be a dynamic mom in the sense that since I left Nigeria almost 27 years ago, I find myself living in French-speaking country, from Côte d'Ivoire to Tunisia to Congo to, different places. They all speak French, So I'm like, if I can do this with my kids, if my kids could be bilingual, why can't I give the same global gift to other children of their generation? So coming to Canada, and since I'm in the education, my background is education. I'm an early childhood educator. And when I'm in school and Canadian system, we have the French immersion and all that. I see a lot of kids in French immersion struggling with speaking this language. They wanted it so badly. Their parents want this for them so badly. They do a lot of writing at school. They do a lot of writing. They do a lot of reading at school. But once they leave the premises of the school, nobody speaks this language with them because their parent can't even speak this language. And that's when the concept came in for me that, what? if I could set up something outside school that could help kids to communicate. Because I realize that some of them, even in class, because they are shy, they don't know how to speak this language. They can't even talk in French class because they are shy and they're in the French system, they're in the French immersion system. So I said, okay, if I can set up a program for parents where they can get outside school, where their kids can come on the platform and just converse with me and talk with me and be themselves. They make the mistake they want to make. I correct them. I give them the courage and the self-confidence they need to be able to start to speak this language. I think this will go a long way. And that was when global VU education came in.
So this sounds like something that I wish I would have had. So I have a daughter who we considered putting her in French immersion. And one of the reasons we ended up not putting her in a French immersion school, which I truly do regret, is the fact that I felt as a parent I would not be able to support her because I don't speak French. So explain to me how the program works. So is it set up for all ages? What kind of things do the kids do when they join your program? Can you give me a little bit more information about how the program works?
Okay, this program is set up basically for age 4 to 12 because as an early childhood educator, I can only work with age 0 to 12. So I just don't want to go out of my boundary. So for me, why did I pick age 4 to 12? Because by age 6, they are starting grade 1 in French immersion system. And some schools even start from kindergarten, which is age 5. And that's why I pick age 5. For me, the concept is that, okay, when your kid is in French immersion or when your kid is about to join the French immersion, don't get me wrong, the government has put in place a fantastic program for the French immersion program. Even if you don't speak French as a parent, your child is going to learn this language and they're going to be the one to teach you, believe me. With what the government has put in place for the French immersion system, they have amazing programs, amazing teachers in the French immersion classes that help them a lot. But what I realized in the system is that the kids, they do a lot of reading, they do a lot of writing, but the conversation side of the program is where I think my children had problem with. And that was when I came in like, okay, you know what? They speak it at school, but once they leave school and the parent do not speak this language, the self-confidence for the child to go into this classroom and start speaking this language will not be 100%. But if you are a parent that speaks the French, if they are exposed to the language at home or outside the school, and they get somebody that speaks it with them often, these children have the courage to get to class and go, oh, more, when the teacher has them questions or when they are learning in class. And that's what I feel. I can provide this outside school for parents that needs it. For parents that really want their children to speak this language. I could start helping them with the basics from self-presentation to what is my name, where do you live, to numbers, to, like I even came up with the idea of posters. Like the book I wrote 4 years ago, I thought of writing the second edition. Then I thought that instead of writing the second edition, that will not do anything for the children I taught. I am an early childhood educator. I have passion for teaching children. I want children to learn from it. I said, I'm not doing a second edition for adults. Now I want to focus on children. So I decided to start picking each and every topic of this book and put it in a poster form. Because children learn more when it's visual. When something is visual, they learn more than when it's really, really theoretical. So each topic of my book, I decided to put it in a poster form. So what I did was that I started the poster from my self-presentation, where I'll put in English and in French. Children will see it, they'll have it in their room. I teach them online with it. When I'm teaching them online, I go, okay, let's do the self-presentation. If they don't speak the language at all, I start with them in English. By the time they understand the concept in English, I turn it to French for them. Then I start to introduce the language to them gradually. And before you know it, when I ask them, présente-moi en français, présente-toi moi en français, the kids start, je m'appelle, j'habite, and you're so happy that, you know what, these kids could not even say anything in French when they started this program. Now they are presenting themselves in French. They get to school, they present themselves to their teachers, and their teacher goes, wow, where did you learn this? That's the concept for me.
Canada has great programs for French immersion. But what about if my child is not in French immersion and I'm just a parent who wants my child to learn French? Are your programs good for or applicable to kids who are not in French immersion but who just want to learn the language?
Yeah, of course, yes. I have some of the children in my program that are not even in French immersion. The difference between the kids that are not in French immersion in my program and the ones that are in French immersion is that the kids that are in French immersion system, once I start them with the program, I realize immediately that they know those things theoretically. It's just verbally that they are struggling with. So when I start the verbal conversation with them, like when I say je m'appelle, already they've heard that in school. So it's easier for them to pick it. But for kids that have not been exposed to the French language before, when I start the language with them, to pronounce even je m'appelle is a little bit difficult to them because they are not exposed to the language. And that's where I have to work more on them to help them with the pronunciation, to help them with how to recognize the words when they see it. Because I don't want them to keep writing. For some parents, like if your child is not in French immersion program, as the program goes further, I intend to ask them to get a notebook and a pen to write so that as they learn it verbally, they can write it. And I advise parents, when they join my program, they buy the posters. So when their children see the posters, I ask the parents, if your child has a poster in his room, I give them assignment. Okay, get your notebook, copy whatever is on your poster in your room. Copy it, then bring it to class and come and read it to me. They are seeing it verbally, they are seeing it written, so it helps them a lot. Either they are in French immersion or they are not in French immersion. Eventually, they're going to grab the language.
So, Faridat, you mentioned that you're an early childhood educator.
Yeah.
If you're giving advice to parents about who want their child to learn a second, a third language, what's the ideal age for them to introduce their child if the child's not going to some sort of an immersion school, if they're just doing it for, to learn another language? What's the best age for children to start to learn? And what's the easiest way for them to get the child to learn another language?
I tell parents that even from the womb, you can speak as many languages as you want to your child. I tell you the truth. Because children can pick as many languages as possible till age 7, 8, 9, 10. Some even go as far as 12. They can pick as many languages. Researchers said they can pick up to 7, they can pick up to 8. It depends on the child's cognitivity, But for me, what I've tried and I know has worked is that parent, if you want your child to pick a particular language, start them as early as possible. Even when they are young, when they are not talking, even when they are in the womb, play music of that particular language. Watch movie, you yourself, on that particular, when they are born, introduce them to cartoon in that particular language. Listen to music, expose them to books in that particular language. What has worked for my children, especially the one that was born in Canada, because my other 2 kids had lived in English-speaking countries, so they understood the language. But the one that was born in Canada, what I did with him was that right from age 2 years old, or even less than 2, I always make him watch 20 minutes of French cartoon every day. Is it that or nothing? When he tells me, I want to watch this, I'm like, okay, have you done your 20 minutes French cartoon today? No, mommy, you have to do that. Sometimes he doesn't like it. But when you watch that cartoon in French, it thinks he's not learning. But at that age, they are learning because their brain is magnet. And one day, I heard him singing. Then he was around 3 years old. I'm like, who taught you that song? He said, I heard it from the cartoon I watch every day. So that's how magnetic their brain is. If you want your child to learn a language, expose them to avenues that will encourage them to pick up the language. Let them watch cartoon in French. Let them do computer games in that particular language. Encourage them to read books on it. Encourage them to listen to music on it. That goes a long way. So parents can do so many things. Yeah, and you can start as early as possible. It doesn't matter. Even when they are still infant, you can play music in that language to them. For them, it's whatever you give them that you take. Children are like that. It's what you give them that they think that's what is right. So if that's what you want for them yourself, you give it to them, they will grab it.
And so we talked about kids and how immerse them as early as possible. What about for someone like me? I'm an adult. I don't have the option to step away from my regular life and immerse myself in a French-speaking country. How could I learn French? Or what are some tips and tricks that you would suggest for an adult to learn a second language?
sometimes I tell adults, I said, you know what? If you're really passionate about something, we go for it and we get it done. That's who we are. Play music. Listen to French music. That's why I thought the book I published 4 years ago, my first approach, when I heard adults complain about they can't sit down and read book, I said, okay, here is the CD. We spend as many times as possible in our car each day in this part of the world. When you are going to work in the morning or when you get into your car in the morning, slot in the CD and listen to it. When you get into your car again, the CD is playing. It's playing. It's in French and English. You are picking the language. That's it. Before you know it, you find yourself in a place where you have to use the language. And it starts to come because what you've been listening to each and every day has registered in your brain. But if you don't make effort, then it won't work. Sometimes people don't have time to sit down and read books. Sometimes people don't have time to sit down and watch movies in French because they don't even watch in English, talk less of sitting to watch in French. Put it in a place. Look for something that you can listen to and put it in a place where you know you spend a lot of time there and play it as many times as often as possible. It could be on your phone. Use maybe when you are jogging, you have it. Put your headphone, jog, listen to it. Put it somewhere. Put something that you can listen to as often as possible. It helps a lot with pronunciation and it helps a lot in grammatic form too.
So really the secret to learning is immerse yourself in any way that you can. I don't necessarily physically have to move myself to a different country, but just immerse myself in any way that I can.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think you have to move it. If you move yourself, yeah, it makes it easier. But if you cannot, there are other ways that you can do it without having to move to a country that speaks the language.
Now let's switch gears and talk for a moment about you and business, because as you said, you've recently started this company, Global VU Education, and so now you're an entrepreneur. What are some of the challenges that you faced as an entrepreneur with this new venture?
Yeah, I think one, as an African, trying to do business in this part of the world, yeah, there are some initial challenges. When my product came out like some months ago and I started pitching around to big stores so they could carry my posters, one thing I realized was that once they call you to come and pitch your product and you come in, once they see you first as a brown person, you could read the look on their face and say, they must have seen your work and love it and think, oh, this is smart, this is amazing. But I feel when they see you as an African or something, as a brown person, they feel, oh, is it this person that is this smart? They don't say it, but you can feel it, So that's some of the challenges I'm going through right now. I'm trying to pitch to a lot of stores, big stores, to carry my posters so that parents can be able to pick it up any day, anytime, anywhere. But yeah, we're still there. Some people, some mentors that I have that have been in business here in Canada and are brown people have advised me that if it's that way, then you need to get somebody as a marketer to front for you. For me, I find it challenging that I want to do it myself because I know the message I want to pass through. But if you have to get somebody to do it and it's not doing it the way you want it, then for me, it's another challenge, Maybe that's what I'll need to do eventually, but I'm somebody that I just don't give up like that. I always want to give my best before trying to like even the the kiddie pal I run online, the way I do it, the energy I put in it, most of my clients right now are mixed, but I can say maybe 75 to 80% of my clients are my fellow brown people. Then the remaining ones are other nationality. But then I think it has to do with some people, when they see, okay, your accent has to come in too. When they hear your accent, they want a more superior accent in their own way. I'm not ready to give up my African accent. Yeah. I tell my kids, I encourage you to have an African accent. I encourage you to have a Canadian accent. I encourage you to have a French accent. I encourage you to have as many accents as possible because what is a skill? If you can tune into different accents, is a great skill. But if you cannot, and you have the stuff in you, the most important thing is to pass the message correctly. That's the way I see things. So I still face that challenge of one, the accent and the color in getting my clients.
And do you think that those challenges would be the same challenges that you'd face if you were pitching your products in Africa, back home in Nigeria, for example, or even if you were in Côte d'Ivoire? Would that be a similar challenge that you would face?
I don't think so. Because I think we Africa, I think in a way, we appreciate ourselves more when we see good things. I want to give that to Africa. I want to believe that if I go to Nigeria, though I tried 2 years ago to go on a French camp in Nigeria, because the way the system is set up back home, it didn't work for me. For them, it might be that it has worked, but for me, it didn't work because for me, the stress was too much because the awareness is not yet there back home that it is important to give your child a global gift of another language. So the awareness is not still there back home. So people are still struggling. It's like, oh, you know what? Why should I spend my money on language when I can use my money to buy something else? Probably to buy a party wear or to buy food or to do something. So there's still that challenge back home. Then, the bureaucracy of not doing things the right way, always want to cut corners and all that. Those things, my system is not still used to it. I like when things are put in place correctly and you follow it and you do what you're supposed to do. So that's why I didn't go back to Nigeria to run the camp again the following year. But they really appreciated it. They love it. They feel it's something they could have. But some of them can't afford it. You know what I mean? But I believe if I'm doing this in Côte d'Ivoire, of course, we appreciate each other. They know this is something they need, that their children. Then in Côte d'Ivoire, I lived there for almost 15 years. I know the energy. They are open to learning. They love English, but they don't have it. So I'm still, my target is to go back to African countries and integrate, like Côte d'Ivoire. If I want to go into Côte d'Ivoire, I want to integrate English. If I want to go into Nigeria, I want to integrate French. So that's my goal. But right now, I'm just starting in Canada, just to get my basis here and to get solid foundation here. Then I can expand my tentacle. But I know it will be well appreciated back in Africa.
And so would you say then, like you just said it, and maybe you can expand on that we need to change our mindset? Is it just that we don't have an appreciation of the need for global? Is it because I would say, for example, I know for sure Nigerians are very widely traveled. And so how is it that they don't appreciate the global view and the need to be more than just English speakers?
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. Nigerians are dynamic people, but in different ways, in different aspects. When it comes to language, I don't think Nigerians are really, really receptive to language in terms of, maybe only few of us, but when it comes to other ways of making it big, Nigerians like to make it big. And when you are in this kind of a field that I am, trying to introduce something new that they don't really feel there's need for it or is really a necessity for them, you really have to work hard to make them see the reason why it is a necessity. That's who we are. Some people really appreciate it and they know it is a necessity, but this percentage of people that sees learning a new language like French or other languages back home as a necessity is not as high as you can imagine. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
Now, you mentioned having spoken to some of your friends, some of your mentors to get advice. What would you say has been some of the best advice that you've been given so far as you're starting down this entrepreneurship journey?
I would say advice from a very great mentor that said, you know what? When we first started, it was like this, it was rough. But now nobody cares anymore whether we are brown or we have accent. You are going to get there, so don't give up. At the beginning, they're going to use that to judge you, but once you are able to escape through that line, nobody will care anymore whether you are brown or you have accent or anything. Just keep doing what you're doing because what you're doing is amazing and is great.
So where do you see global VU education in 5 years, in 10 years from now? What are your goals and dreams and ambitions for this brand that you've created?
Okay, where I see global VU in 5, 10 years would be bringing African kids across nations to show that, you know what, we can do it. We can use language to blend. We can use language to be connected in so many ways. Not just in Africa, but even to Canada, to France. Bringing Nigerian kids to France and then being able to converse without having stress. Bringing Côte d'Ivoire kids to Canada, to Toronto, without them having to struggle speaking English to anyone. Bringing kids from African schools to Canadian schools, kids from French-speaking African country schools to Canadian English-speaking schools, blending and relating in a positive way. That's my goal.
And what would you say so far, not necessarily even with Global VU education, but just as a person moving through the world, what's been your proudest accomplishment so far?
Oh, I would say being able to manage my marriage, my kids, my work, and my business right now has been one of my greatest accomplishments. Because I know it's not easy for people to manage work, to manage children, to manage marriage and all that. Being African, we know how, for wives, we have to be devoted. There are some certain things African wives have to do. We're Africans, we're Africans. That's the reality of it. Our men expect a lot from us, and being able to, yeah, that's the truth about it. Being able to deliver that and being able to raise your kids and look at them and be happy and being able to do what you love and what you have passion for at the same time is like doing 3 in 1 together. And I'm so happy that I'm able to start up with that. And so far, I'm happy with what I've accomplished with that.
And so you talked about doing what you love. What is it that you love to do?
Oh, I love to impart passion in children. I love to give a certain gift to children that I know that makes me happy. I love it when I give something to people and I look back and I see them and I see something that I've contributed to their life. It makes me feel accomplished, especially children.
So you love the aspect of being an inspiration to these kids.
Of course, yes. That's my goal, to be a great inspiration to my children's generation.
And so who are some of the people, some of the women in particular who've inspired you?
Oh, I never took time to look back at that. But I've said the first person I always admire would be Oprah. When I look at her story and how dynamic and how strong she is, I'll say, oh, if she can do it, I think I can do better, So I look at people like Oprah and the Liberian president and, and other leaders that are women. And I'm like, you know what? In Africa, not only in Africa anyway, I realize in most parts of the world, women are seen to be weak. So I try to look around and see women that I can copy and emulate and like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. But I think Oprah will be the first on my list.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I haven't covered that you'd like for us to chat about?
Oh, yeah. Amazingly, you are able to tentacle every part of to every part of what I knew you were going to go into, or even further than what I thought you were going to go into, which is amazing. I'll just keep encouraging African women. Don't give up. Keep doing what you're doing. Just believe in yourself. There are challenges out here. There are challenges everywhere. Even back home, there are challenges. Don't give up. Do what you know you love doing. Pray. Get support of families and friends. Make yourself happy. Happiness is the key. And just enjoy yourself with whatever you're doing. That's it.
Yes, happiness is indeed the key. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
Now, before I ask you the final question and before we end this interview, I'd love to know and for you to share, where can people find you? Where can people find you online? And where can people find more information about your programs?
Yeah, people can visit us online by going to www.globalvueducation.com. We have a lot of information on it. If you want to register for your child for the program, is there. If you want to get a copy of My First Approach to Being Bilingual with the CD, is there. You can go on Amazon, is there too. And if you want to get copies of our posters, they are all online. You can go on globalvueducation.com. You will be able to buy your posters, you'll be able to buy your books and CD, and you'll be able to register your child for our program.
So just to remind everybody, the name of your book is My First Approach to Being Bilingual. And also, just in case people don't know how to spell the name of your company, it's Global VOUS Education, and VOUS being VOUS. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's written Global VOUS, but it's pronounced Global VOUS.
Okay, so that's globalvouseducation.com. So they can go there to find your book, to find the posters, and also to sign up for any of the programs if they're interested.
Yeah. That's
Now, last question about your programs, actually, Faridat, is do I have to be in, because I know you're in Canada, but do I have to be in Canada, or is this something that I could sign up from anywhere that I want to sign up from?
Yeah, right now I cover Canada and US right now. Going forward, I'm looking into covering other countries and other, but right now it's basically US and Canada.
Okay, but you're looking to expand in the very near future.
Yeah. We're looking to expand it. This is our first year, so we're still looking to expand in the very near future.
So happy first anniversary for Global VOUS. It sounds like you're making quite an impact. I've certainly heard very positive things about you and your organization, as well as the posters.
Oh, thank you so much. You should go online and get some. How old is your child, please?
No, my child is not a child anymore. My child is an adult now.
Oh, yeah. So until you become a grandma, that's when you will need it again.
Yes, maybe when I'm a grandmother. As soon as I find out I'm going to be a grandmother, I'll be reaching out to you and getting those posters, Faridat.
Oh, that would be amazing. And please expose your grandchild to the bilingual world. Let him watch cartoons, listen to music, read books, and all that. Yeah.
I will do that. Now, before we end, I always end our interviews with one final question. Now, Ndini, which is the name of our podcast, means I am in my mother tongue, Shona. I'd like you to finish that sentence for me, please, Faridat. I am.
I am unique, passionate, dynamic, to give a global gift to every global child.
Thank you so much, Faridat. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for the amazing work that you're doing in trying to make our planet even more connected than it already is.
Oh, thank you so much, Ndini.
Thank you. Well, my conversation with Faridat has inspired me to dust off my old French books and maybe even start practicing my rusty French skills. Faridat said her passion comes from her belief that being bilingual is a fundamental gift that we should be giving to all our children. She said it's not about disowning our African languages or accents, but more about allowing us to be able to communicate on a global stage. She said that we should be giving our kids a head start on learning other languages as early as possible. Parents should be reading to their children and playing music in the chosen language even while the child is still in the womb. And she said we can even sneak some learning into playtime by letting our kids watch cartoons and play games in other languages. And she said that as an adult, there is absolutely no excuse for us not to learn another language. That age-old excuse of not having time, well, she says it's easy to immerse ourselves during our downtime. She says you can listen to audio lessons and practice your language skills while you drive or even while you're working out. And she said even something as simple as listening to music in your chosen language will help you start to learn it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ndini podcast. I don't take even a single listener for granted. As you know, my goal with this platform is to help shift and change the narrative on Africa, and in particular about African women. But I need your help to do that. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. You can also follow us on SoundCloud. And please share. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. It helps me to bring great guests to the show, and it also helps others discover the podcast. And of course, I always want to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on my conversation with our guest today and what you took away from it or what inspired you. I'd also love to hear from you if you have suggestions for other women you think I should absolutely have on the show. Our handle on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is @Ndini Media. Or you can reach out to me through our website, which is ndini.com. That's NDINI.com. Until next time, I'm Sandra Chuma. Be well.